Taxi drivers of Reddit, have you ever had someone jump into your taxi and tell you to follow someone? What happened? However, though I am not a taxi driver, I feel that I can contribute to the atmosphere of peace and love with this story. My next door neighbor came over to my house, knocked on my door urgently, and told me he needs me to chase after a car. He needed me to drive and find the pizza delivery man because he accidentally gave him a $100 bill instead of a $50. I was once a driver and the opposite happened. My fault, but still. As a taxi driver for 3 years, if anyone told me to do anything dangerous or annoying, like speeding or picking up more passengers than seat belts, I would usually refuse, especially if the request came from a drunk promising I'll tip you fat, bro. One special occasion, bar crawling students started piling into my car. I opened up with my routine statement, I only have 4 seats available. Before I could tell them too many, a guy no taller than 5 feet stuffed himself into the cab at the foot of his friend already seated at the front. He folded up like a battle droid and his friend simply told me he's small, it's okay. I took them to their dorm. You have made me think long and hard if this was my group of friends. Nick, his name is Nick. I'm not a cab driver, but I did make this request once. My fraternity was doing an amazing race type thing in Manhattan when I was in college and my team was neck and neck with another. We'd all finished the challenge simultaneously and the other guys stole a cab from us. Another pulled up and we rushed into it shouting, "Follow that cab." The driver's reaction was, "No, no, no, whatever this is, no, get out." I would love to hear some stories from that cab driver. He's definitely seen some crap. My dad used to drive taxis for a short while and he once gave a man a free ride because the first thing he said upon getting in the taxi was "follow that car." My dad always wanted someone to say it to him and was overjoyed. Your dad sounds cool, can I have him? Sorta different, but in the 60s my dad was a Chicago cab driver and Muhammad Ali hailed his cab and told him he wanted him to lead the way to different clothing stores and stuff for his wife. So instead of following someone else, my dad got followed by Muhammad Ali for a couple hours. The dude told him to keep the meter running and paid him, gave him an autograph and stuff. Great story. I used to drive taxis in London 25 years ago. Whenever someone jumped in and said they were in a rush, I would just rev more and take corners harder to throw them round a bit, while really going no quicker. The sensation of speed was usually enough for a tip. This is like that thing I saw on TV about bartenders. When guys ask for more alcohol, a trick bartenders use is the long pour so it looks like you're getting more alcohol but the amount is the same as a regular pour. Somewhat related but kind of opposite. I was once in a cab in Brooklyn during college with my best friend. We are both women BTW. We knew the way to get home and gave the driver our destination. He started driving the opposite direction and down many side streets, most likely assuming we were easy prey to run the meter longer. We immediately told him that he was headed the wrong direction and, politely, asked him to go the route we knew. That's legal in NYC as well and cabbies are supposed to follow your preferred route. Plus he was headed the wrong way. He locked the doors on us and started driving very slowly but with his head turned towards us so he wasn't even looking at where he was going while he berated us and told us it was his cab and us we would go whatever way he wanted. We requested he let us out of the cab then and we would pay the fare and find a different driver to get us home. He refused. The doors were locked and the car was in motion and wouldn't let us out. It was very scary. I took a picture of his medallion number which made him angrier. At this point we were very scared of him. Finally we begged him enough to stop the car that he did and we ran out without paying the fare. We ran to another cab and were desperately hailing it when the first cab driver stopped his car and got out and started running after us, swearing he would kill us. The second cab driver let us in and we screamed just get us away from that man and he immediately started driving so fast without any questions and once we started to feel safe we gave him our destination and told him the story. He was so upset to hear it, encouraged us to call 311 and report him. We did. He had a hearing and had to pay a fine, and talked about how sick it made him that women were treated this way by some men. He was truly our savior and I'll never forget him. He locked the doors on us and started driving very slowly but with his head turned towards us so he wasn't even looking at where he was going while he berated us and told us it was his cab and us we would go whatever way he wanted. That is definitely worth calling 911 for next time I think. I got the story firsthand a couple of days ago from the tuk-tuk rickshaw driver himself, who was asked to follow someone. It all started when someone jumped into the guy's tuk-tuk and asked him to follow another tuk-tuk that was a few kilometers 100 meters ahead. The tuk-tuk driver said that he followed the other tuk-tuk without asking for an explanation, and when the tail tuk-tuk stopped in a fairly secluded place, he noticed a middle-aged man step out with a child of 5 or 6. The passenger on our protagonist's tuk-tuk then related the story of his following the other tuk-tuk to him. The passenger, a good Samaritan, was walking in a marketplace a few minutes earlier when he overheard a suspicious conversation that went on between the kid and the guy, involving the kid wanting to go to home because you, the middle-aged man, wouldn't get me the bicycle. The tuk-tuk driver got off the rickshaw and headed for the guy, who left the boy alone to go for a pee. He then interrogated him with the good Samaritan, and in the fashion of a true pedophile, the middle-aged man gave an incoherent account of his relationship with the boy and kept stumbling over his own words. It later turned out that the middle-aged man lured the kid out of his hometown with the promise to buy him a bicycle and took him over to a different city altogether to be secluded with him. I'm not a taxi driver, but a police officer. I was moonlighting at a club and a fight broke out inside. The bouncers had an unusually hard time getting this one guy out of the club. I went inside to help and he took a swing at me. He then took off running out of the club down the street. I gave chase, but this guy was fast. I didn't have a chance at catching him. I chased him maybe 2 blocks and saw a taxi sitting in front of this other club. I jumped in the taxi and told the driver to follow him. We caught up with the guy, and as we approached him, he was attempting to flag us down. I told the taxi driver to stop for him, and as he opened the door there I was. He was too surprised to do anything but stand there. I placed him under arrest and called for another unit to come pick us up. In his mind, you are literally Agent Smith. Not a taxi driver, but I was once in a taxi returning home and I saw my father in his car driving home. I told him to follow that car and he just complied. Just before getting off the car he said that it wasn't the first time people asked him that, lol. And that's how you found out your dad was having an affair. As you go, this is not my beautiful house. This is a story from one of my friends, but I feel it's relevant enough. It goes something like this. Once my friend was about to get in a fight with another fellow outside a party, and to prevent the situation from escalating, I quickly put the both of us in a cab and told the driver to get us the heck out of there. A few minutes later we realize we're being followed by the same guys from the party on another taxi, probably thirsty for blood. We tried to communicate the seriousness of our situation to our Indian taxi driver, but he wouldn't say anything in response. At this point, we weren't even sure if he spoke English. So I took $20 out of my pocket, put it on the deck of the car and said, "I'll give you this right now if you run that red light." The driver stared at me for the longest time and grabbed the $20 bill without saying a word. What followed were the most intense 60 seconds of my life, as we ran past over several red lights at blazing speed, performing ridiculously sharp turns like this crap was GTA V. In the end, we lost the guys chasing us. When we arrived at our destination, we thanked the driver, and he just stared at us as he drove away. I'll never forget that man. All I can see is Dopinder, the taxi driver from Deadpool. A similar story. 10 years ago I was in the train station about to leave T-City when I got an urgent phone call to fix one thing on the company's server. So I jumped in a taxi and I directed the driver to drive me exactly under my window to get the Wi-Fi. I pulled up my laptop and connected to server. I had a text mode matrix like Linux and I could see the driver staring into the screen. In my country you can sit in the right place of the taxi driver. When I finished I said, "Now drive me back to train station. Quick. I have a train to catch." I only realized what was in the man's head when he said at the end of the trip, "Just for you to know, I have a son that works for Secret Service too. I'm actually with Chaos. Have a great day." I've asked a taxi to follow the car in front of us because I was in a large group of people being picked up at the airport and the taxi ahead of us had the guy who knew what hotel we were going to. Pretty uneventful. That's not very interesting. I got out of a taxi after a night out and went to my door. After I got inside I realized I dropped my phone in the cab. It was a black cab. I didn't have a number to call. Cue me running back out to the high road, spotting what I assume is my cab caught at some lights. I run down the road until there's another black cab coming along in the same direction the first cab left. So I exhausted myself shouting and fagging down this one down, also running across and down the road to catch him, before jumping in and asking him to follow the other one. I quickly explained and he was really helpful. I couldn't remember anything like the cab company or the license plate, just that I'd recognize the driver. But the guy still chased the cab that I roughly assumed was mine. We were drinking along for 5 minutes and we kept catching sight of the cab ahead, just always one set of lights ahead. Then several other taxis began to appear as we approached a main intersection. I lost the one we were following and a bundle of what seemed like 10 taxis, but was probably closer to 3 with me panicking. We started to pull up beside them, with me leaning out the window trying desperately to see the drivers. And like magic he was the first one we drove by. The other taxis were somehow in front. We drove up beside him at the lights and I shouted to the driver, who recognized me. He pulled in and I got my phone back. The new cab dropped me home and asked for a paltry amount since he hadn't actually started the meter. I was so happy I just gave him a big tip. Then I got home and had a minor freak out that the adrenaline had delayed. Overall 8/10 but would not do again. My great uncle was a taxi driver. As a child he had polio, so naturally as an adult he struggled to walk and needed crutches. One night he drove a woman home. The next day his boss received a complaint about him and he was called to the police station. It somehow ended up going to court, but basically the woman accused him of driving her home, then chasing her down the street, on his feet, and assaulting her. His lawyer's defense consisted of calling him to the stand. As he hobbled up to the stand on crutches, the woman's face was priceless as she realized she picked a bad cabbie to sue. Amazing. Thinking about this a bit, taxi jobs could be very dangerous. The client could tell you to follow a car with his buddy in it, lead you to some dark place and rob you. Dang. I'm pretty sure most taxi drivers would avoid dark places for this exact reason, particularly in cities. Not a taxi driver, but this legit happened to me. Driving through my old college town, where I lived and was a student at the time, in my 2-door car, I see a girl running in the road, not on the sidewalk. Slow down to ask if she is okay and needs help. She opens my door and somehow wiggles her way past my seatbelt into the back seat, hands me a $10 bill, and yells, "Follow that truck." It was a big red truck in front of me. I say okay. She seems happy until we get to a red light, which the truck runs. I say, "I'm not running the light." She says okay, asks me to open my door, and proceeds to run after the truck down the road. The car ride was very quick. We only drove a couple blocks. To this day I have no idea what it was all about. Maybe she really likes red trucks. Like this video or this chonker will sit right on top of your house. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.